What the hell was the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix? I don't know anything. What stuff happened? Oh my lord. Hello, welcome to the Winging It F1 podcast. Well, me, Freddie Coates, and him, Nigel Chu, just the two of us are going to say things that happened yesterday in Saudi Arabia and then have opinions on it and then probably change them immediately after we've stopped recording and then have to stand by it and then not know what's gone on. And then the season will finish before we know what's happened in Saudi Arabia. What the hell happened in Saudi Arabia, Nigel?
Oh, I'll tell you what, Freddie, that has to be one of the most controversial motorsport or sporting events I've ever seen. It was absolutely off the scale, and it was so much happened. I couldn't believe it. I think I was laughing at some of the things that happened. It was that controversial, and yeah, I mean, I'm still not sure what to make of it all, but in a way, it's just peak F1, whether it's a good thing or bad thing, but we might never see a championship fight like this ever again. It is just absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, I know what you mean with peak F1. Where I'm from, for a bit of my childhood, peak meant bad, and it also meant good. So
Yeah.
who knows? I think that works very well to describe it. Normally for these sort of podcast run throughs, we either talk about the talking point, talk about the winner first, that kind of thing. I remember when we did our Magello podcast, we spoke at first about the big crash at the start. But I think with this one, we've discussed this, obviously, it's a good thing to do this chronologically, because to put a sort of ranking on everything that's happened in this race would just be confusing to discuss, because we'd be like, oh, well, let's talk about this incident. And it's like, well, that was that incident, but this was this incident. And every incident is actually not an incident, and it's all a conspiracy that's going to be unfolded. And it's actually Michael Massey's fault. But who knows? We don't. And anyway, the whole thing's controlled by lizards, but whatever. But let's start with something that was a bit more steady. Let's go back to qualifying Saturday night, Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, on a street track that isn't actually streets. It's just a racing track with walls. We had a standard qualifying session. Nigel, what happened?
Wow. I don't think it was anything but steady, Freddie, and I didn't mean that was not meant to rhyme, but it did. Well, it was pretty normal until Q3, the end of Q3, when Verstappen was fastest and Hamilton put in a fantastic lap to go quicker. And then in the last minute, it was all about watching Verstappen because Hamilton was on his way back to the pits. And that lap was absolutely out of this world until the final corner. He was up against the walls everywhere, nothing left on the table. Full send. I don't think I've seen a lap where you visibly, especially the modern F1 cars, to visibly see the speed, the direction change, the commitment. It was just absolutely incredible. And it would have been probably the greatest qualifying lap I have ever seen in F1 in the 15 years or so I've been watching F1. It was just out of this world. But then he made that mistake. And I think, so he said he braked at the same point with Verstappen at the final corner, but I think because he was carrying a tiny bit more speed than the previous lap, that's why he locked up. And then he tried to carry on. That's probably the mistake. If he lifted out of it, yeah, he might have not have had pull anyway, but he tried to get on the throttle and it was never really going to happen, so he hit the wall. But up until that final corner, my word, that was just an outrageous lap from Max Verstappen. Just wow.
I gave him the kind of equivalent of a commentator's curse. I think it was my fault because I was watching it.
We watched it on Sky. Girls were 2 minutes behind.
I was watching it where I was watching it, and I was on the edge of my seat watching it happen. It's like, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. It's up. He's up. And then after sector 2 split, when that final sort of DRS zone, because really sector 3 was nothing. I was like, okay, that's the hard bit done. This is the easy bit. he's got this in the bag. And I said it, and I never say that. I'm all big. Like when you get commentators who like, this guy's going to win this race and it's the start of the final lap. Like, no, don't say it. Don't say it till they cross the line. But I was like, okay, that's the hard bit done. This is the easy bit now. And then he hit the wall. And I was like, oh, for goodness sake. But yeah, you're exactly right with him saying he braked in the same place. The traces, he actually braked a little bit earlier. And it's just, his closing speed was so much higher because like he's the original speed through turn 24, whatever it is, was ridiculous. And that corner is something else. It's rewards everyone for that kind of commitment. And I think, if there a few people are comparing to Singapore 2018 from Lewis, that perfect lap, in terms of just absolute perfection. But I think this one had a little bit on it in that it would have had a little bit on it in that it had just, I don't know, there was fingertips.
Yeah,
it felt perfect.
Right. And, penultimate race of the season, penultimate qualifying of the season, knowing your championship rival is ahead as well. To do it in the last minute of Q3, I think Hamilton in Singapore, it was the first run and stuff, and there was still 7 or 8 races left. This was just, oh my God, the way the car was moving around was just out of this world, and the commitment, I cannot explain how much bravery it took to do that up against the walls, and unfortunately just one corner too many.
One corner too many, and on a 27 corner track, that's actually kind of fair enough when you think about it like that. But obviously, while we were on board with Verstappen's lap, Bottas managed to just jump in for second, and that meant that Verstappen then started the Grand Prix in third. There was no need to take a gearbox penalty. Red Bull deemed that absolutely fine. And at the time, I kind of agreed with them. Everyone obviously concerned about it, obviously with Charles Leclerc's heartbreak in Monaco earlier in the season. But really, did you really think that they should have taken a gearbox penalty at the time? Were you thinking they need to do this, or would you think, okay, it was only a third gear corner, really? And that was the sort of the slowest point of the circuit, apart from turn 1 where he hit the wall.
No idea, to be honest, Freddie. I think what I will say is Red Bull operationally generally get it right strategically as well, to get things right more than, say, Ferrari, who have a history of getting the odd thing wrong here and there. So whatever decision Red Bull took, I always believed they would do the right thing, and they did do the right thing because the gearbox was fine. So I don't really have an opinion of whether they should have done it. If I had a gun to my head, I'd probably say be cautious, take the 5 grid players penalty. But they did the right thing in the end, so you can't. That was a great move actually, because they easily could have gone cautious, but that's not the Red Bull mentality.
Precisely the mentality that's definitely come more through the turbo hybrid era for Red Bull than previously, where it's aggressive strategies, doing something different just for the sake of it because it might do something. And it's definitely a Max Verstappen strategy. We saw it in Qatar, where he, second place was sealed. They could have tootled around, they could have controlled it, but they was still like, okay, all right, well, let's just have some fun. Let's try and do something. Let's be a little bit eccentric with it. And that's, just to give it a go. And that mentality has definitely served them quite well, I think. And it's been born out of it has come from the sort of hardship of being off the pace in 2014, catastrophically off the pace in 2015, and then having a resurgence in 2016, kind of giving them a bit of like, okay, well, if we're a bit aggro, a bit out there, we can push it a bit. And that's worked for them wonders this year. And I think that speaks a lot of what we've seen from Red Bull, I think. But obviously, let's move on to the race. Overnight, we had time to wait and just be like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Mercedes are they going to walk it? Is there going to be chaos? There were a lot of nerves going to this race. And then at the start, everyone made it through lap 1.
Yeah. First 12 laps were clean.
First
10 laps. Sorry.
First 10 laps were clean. 10 laps we had Hamilton and Bottas controlling the pace, exploring how much they could push, realizing they could push a bit more and have a decent gap so that Bottas wouldn't be affected by Hamilton, but would be able to close up if need be, keep close enough to strategically be a hindrance to Verstappen for obvious reasons, and Hamilton could pull away if necessary. This is what's always being debated between the Merc strategy, and then we got to lap 10 where Michael Schumacher's son Mick, 21st race of the year. Finally, it was going to happen at some point. Michael Schumacher, goodness me. Mick Schumacher's Haas went into the wall. And there we had a safety car. And what happened under the safety car, Nigel?
Well, Hamilton and Bottas pitted, Verstappen didn't, and it looked like Red Bull made a massive mistake. But then the red flag came out, which saved them. And in fact, in a way, it's one of those things where not being first is better. So Verstappen's mistake in qualifying helped him because he was third. And that put him in the position to be in the lead because of the red flag. You couldn't change your tyres, you could change anything on the car. So it was one of those weird situations. And one thing I'll say on this is we didn't see any footage of the barrier being repaired. That's all I'm going to say.
As in,
we didn't see any cranes there. We didn't see any footage of like them doing anything. And Michael Massey,
so do you
didn't go there. That's all I'm saying.
I don't think anything would have happened entertainment-wise. Is that what you're insinuating? I think arguably there's I think you can.
Well, the question is, did the barrier have to be repaired?
Probably not. But if you have any concerns, maybe we'll need to repair this barrier, should probably not have cars going near it. Then yeah, that's the case. I mean, that's kind of discussion is obviously it took a bit of time because there was a bit of time before we had all the pit stop sequences and the sort of necessary strategy evaluations prior to the red flag even occurring. But I think that decision is made probably with consultancy across the track and across the race control, and arguably with Bert Mailander and the safety car team as well, checking it out as they drive past it when they're at full speed. So I don't know. I'm hesitant to criticize anything like that.
I actually think it was the right decision. I just thought we would have seen some footage, but I kind of agreed with, especially such a high speed accident as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Verstappen at Silverstone, I think it was the right thing to do. I just thought we would have seen some imagery of it. So, I think really there wasn't really much necessity from an entertainment perspective for footage of the barrier, mostly because we had so much radio chatter from the FIA and various teams, and from Verstappen to his team, from Hamilton to his team, about each other, about Bottas backing him up and not getting investigated and stuff like that, which was blatant. That was, let's be honest, been investigated.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've seen Hamilton get a penalty for that in the past. We've seen in Bahrain, I think 2017, backed up Ricardo, and we've seen it a couple of times since where it has been pretty like, well, you're just doing that because you're being an idiot, which is, I mean, I think because the gaps were a little bit spacey at the start of the safety car period anyway, and who knows, but he was definitely backed up there, was Verstappen. Every right to complain about that, and we heard about that a lot. And then on the way to the grid, Lewis was then saying, Max did a practice start, and there was a little replay of that, and he did do a practice start. And I haven't checked the rule book about that, but if someone thinks it's probably against the rules, then it probably is to do it in the fast lane. Didn't Lewis get a 10-second penalty for doing it in an unsafe location in Sochi in 2020? It wasn't in the pit lane, it was at the exit, but it's still, is it technically an unsafe location when you're in the fast lane of the pit lane? I can't remember
if there were like specific rules for that track. So like some tracks to say you can't do it and you can.
They had a seem to have sure. It's a weird one, particularly under red flag conditions, which makes everything unique and whatnot. But anyway, those were two uninvestigated events that arguably garnered an investigation and would be spoken about massively if the rest of the race was boring. But the rest of the race wasn't boring because, Nigel, we went back to racing action. Go.
We did. Well, first of all, Hamilton went very slowly to the grid, which annoyed Verstappen. Or was that the second time round? No, that was the first time round.
That was first time round because Verstappen was ahead.
Round. And then Hamilton got the jump on Verstappen, a fantastic launch yet again. He had two brilliant launches, Hamilton, his first two starts, it has to be said. But Verstappen somehow went round the outside, didn't really make the corner, went across it a bit, and he's retaken the lead off the track, basically. So
yeah, he came back on track and sort of straight lined it, sort of arguably at a right angle to the direction the car should be going. And then all of the melee for this meant that he wasn't able to give the position back because Ocon had got in between the two of them, and then there was carnage in the background where we saw Perez arguably squeezed Charles Leclerc a little bit too much and then got tapped round and lost his front wing and broke his transmission. And then in that kind of track being blocked, we saw George Russell then have to slow to avoid that, which meant that Mazepin hit the back of him in a terrifying accident. That was scary. I did not enjoy watching that replay. And we got another red flag.
Again. Yeah, thank God for Halo again.
Yeah.
Really Mazepin, he just had nowhere to go. He didn't react quick enough. At those speeds, you have to react so quickly. So I can't really blame him too much. And on the Perez, Leclerc, Gasly incident itself, I don't think anyone can really be blamed. Maybe Perez was squeezing over, but I'm not sure how.
He had Gasly on the other side.
Gasly was.
Yeah.
There you go. So it's just a case of 3 into 1 doesn't go. So
particularly there.
I can't really blame anyone for that. But yeah, you could argue Verstappen caused it all because he everyone would have concertinaed, wouldn't they? Behind.
That's too indirect, though, definitely.
Yeah, it was. But what's interesting is, I mean, we'll get onto this. The way he cut the corner was completely different to later on in the race, and I think he's done it because he knew Hamilton was on the left, so he's got across the curve to kind of like block counters off so Ocon goes through. So. Yeah, I mean, we'll get onto it later. I'll save what I'm going to say.
Well, yeah. So in any normal situation in racing, obviously, we know you hand the position back if you overtake off track. And obviously that's happened in this season and it's happened this weekend in F2 and so on. Obviously, Bahrain is the obvious example for Formula One, where Max very easily gave the position back to Lewis after passing him what was fractionally deemed off track then. So that, there's precedent for that. But when there's a car in between, it's naturally much harder. There were there's an art to doing it, and Sainz did it wonderfully in Austin, where he was overtaken by Norris and then was off track when he got back past him. But then Norris was then passed by Ricciardo, then Sainz let Ricciardo back through and then passed him again, something like that, which is a fantastic sort of clever driving, and it sort of tit for tat worked really. And I think there was probably some unheard radio. McLaren was like, okay, we're fine with that, move on. But with it being another driver, another team, a driver like Ocon who's not really supposed to be there, then it can completely change the face of racing etiquette and would really be a slam dunk penalty for Verstappen in that situation. Would you say that? 5 seconds slam dunk?
I think so. For me, yeah. But given some of the decisions this year, you never know. But for me, yeah, I think it would be the 5-second time penalty. Yeah. Yeah,
let's go on us. Let's not try and figure out what other people think. That's like, I mean, I sort of a Canada 2019 springs to mind there, but I thought this was. I still think this was a deliberate move, and that was a circumstance, if that makes sense. Anyway, so this one then became a matter for race control in a rather interesting way, with Michael Massey getting involved and laying down an offer to Red Bull, saying, with the eventual offer being, okay, well, so currently we're Max P1, Esteban P2, Lewis P3. If we put Max in P3, that means he's given the position back to Lewis. And then Ocon's on pole, which is fun. And I actually think this was quite neat as a kind of compromise. I thought it was handled really appallingly. And I think the fact that it's then played out over global media is frankly more laughable than it should be, because I think it was actually a really neat way of organizing it.
I think so as well. And I think the problem is it's an unprecedented situation. We've never had it before, and we've also not had these FIA team radio things until this year. So who knows what kind of agreements or deals have happened in the past? And there's probably been quite a lot. We just don't know about them or haven't heard them. So I didn't mind it personally, and I think the Ocon Hamilton Verstappen order was, I think that was fair. I think that given the situation, that was probably fair, because Ocon shouldn't be disadvantaged, and Verstappen gets penalised by being put two good places back, and Hamilton gets to be ahead of Verstappen. So I think it was the right thing to do. Just a strange, weird way of doing it, and obviously there's no kind of precedent or rules to like say this should happen, kind of thing. So yeah, I thought that was correct.
Yeah, it was unique, and the red flag gave him the time to organize it. And yeah, it was a nice way of avoiding massive Twitter arguments and everything.
There's still massive Twitter arguments.
Oh, I mean, yeah, but I think that one's the one with the most consensus, if anything, in my opinion. That it's kind of like, okay, cool. There's been a penalty, but the penalty is upholding racing etiquette. And that's the bit that I sort of respected, was that it's kind of like, yeah, you give the position back. It's the equivalent of that, but in a scenario of the red flag. And I can't remember how soon the safety car was called from the original crashes, but I think it was a little bit longer than we would have expected. But it's still not enough time for Verstappen really to have given the position back in an easy way, because it's such an awkward track for that. There were no braking events until that point.
Yeah.
So then that happened, and we come to race start number 3, numero tres, lap 17. We've had a fair amount happen already. This is where I was like, okay, let's calm down a bit, deep breath. And we get some decent launches from Ocon, great launch from Hamilton to get alongside Ocon, and then a decent launch from Verstappen, and then a bloody good lunge from Verstappen.
My word. Just like, again, this is a commitment. He just, and the thing is, with the title on the line, to be doing these kind of moves, I don't think any other driver would be mad enough to go for it. But it just somehow does. Maybe it's because he thinks, or maybe because he knows Red Bull have a slightly slower car, so he has to get ahead, get that track position. But to execute it, to not lock up, to stay in control, stay on the track that time, it was just unbelievable. The skill it takes, cold tires as well, dirty side of the track. It was just a brilliant overtake, one of the overtakes of the season, I think. And there was nothing anyone could do. I mean, Hamilton probably saw it last minute, so he couldn't block him or anything.
You can see it.
Probably had no idea it was happening because he was on the outside. So just what an overtake from Max. And I mean, it set up a brilliant race after that, didn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, I was just going to say, on Max's move, you can compare it to the second start pretty well. Like, the desperation to be, I think you're right about the Rebel being the slower car. That was my take as well. There's a desperation to be, I need to be ahead of that Mercedes car, otherwise there's no hope. The second start, there was desperation. He went off track and he came back in an erratic way and so on. In this one, there was desperation just with, okay, well, I'm just going to plant it on the brakes. And it was judged to perfection in a brilliant way. And I think you can see that Hamilton just sort of go, oh, okay, all right. And Ocon, I think, said after the race something along the lines of, I knew they were going to be aggressive with each other. I didn't think they'd be so aggressive with me. And he was just an innocent bystander being basically like, and now I'm in the championship fight. What? Which I thought was, I did kind of think don't think any of us would have expected Esteban Ocon to be involved in such a key moment of the championship. But anyway, at this stage, but you're right, it just set up a cracker of a race because it was from then on, it was cat and mouse. We had a bottleneck forming behind Ocon really in terms of pace. So Bottas was trapped behind Ocon and Ricciardo. Ocon, who is a good racer. Ricciardo, who has speed on the straights, is a hard one for Bottas there on this kind of track. And Ocon was on it this weekend, which meant that Lewis and Max were chasing each other off into the distance. And I don't know however long it took for them to get a 20-second lead, but it wasn't we didn't have to wait long.
It was just punch for punch, wasn't it? I mean, we think about Suzuka 2000, Hill versus Schumacher, say 94 Suzuka. So many races this year we've had Hamilton and Verstappen just going at it, leaving nothing on the table, not saving tyres or not really saving tyres that much. Just think about Bahrain, France, USA, Brazil, and now this might top the whole lot. There's probably a few more that I've forgotten. So it was just an absolute war out there. They were right up against the barriers. They weren't quite qualifying laps because you can't do that in modern F1, but they were as close as you could get to qualifying esque laps in F1. So
they went from 33s to 31s in about 5 laps.
Yeah. As the fuel went down, they just got faster. And they were just pushing each other to the limit. Hamilton knew as he had the harder tyre compound, he could push Verstappen, try to make his tyres wear out, which they did. But the way they drove, to not make a mistake, to not lock up, to not go wide, to hit every single apex, that takes some skill. And just that. I just love those proper race battles. We've had so many of them this year. This might have been the best.
Yeah, this was the purest moment of the Grand Prix. And obviously pure F1 gets thrown around a lot, but it was, like you say, it was just driving attack. Yeah. And you could see parts of the track where Verstappen was faster. Like sector 1, Verstappen's commitment was just on another level, and he would pull up half a second out in sector 1, and then that would be closed by Lewis until the end of the lap. And then the same would happen. And it was more and more and more. And you could see sort of Lewis was having to build up onto that level of commitment that Max was just turning off and on like a switch. Lewis having to build up to it. And then Max, obviously, his tyres are going, like you say, they're on mediums. And eventually Lewis Hamilton gets close enough to be in DRS range. And that's when we get the first attack on track into turn 1. And Verstappen, he's weaving around, he's trying to break the toe, as is his right. And I thought this move was going to be completed way before turn 1.
Was it like Brazil, do you think, Freddie? Was it like Brazil?
No, I think it was like there were elements of Brazil, but I think it was like Imola. Imola at the start.
The start at Imola.
Yeah. And I think that was the intention. I think that was the intention. I think that was Verstappen's intention, was to hold on right to the edge and then force Hamilton off track, and then he can stay on track. But he got a swapper, took in a little bit too much speed, which then meant he then forced Hamilton off track, which was therefore, as goes the rules, he's forced Hamilton off track. And Hamilton actually then came back and tried to take the apex. Verstappen went straight. Straight lined it. And I think with that regard, I think the intention was not like Brazil. I think in Brazil, I think the intention was, oh, look, that bit of runoff, I'm going to drive on that. Whereas this intention was to put Hamilton on the runoff. Do you agree with that? Does that make sense?
I think the intention, is different, but the way it happened,
is
basically the same.
Yeah,
for me, that's why I don't get it. Well, it just brings into question why wasn't he penalised in Brazil when he was penalised there. Right.
That's to bed now, because basically we just say, well, the stewards in Brazil were stupid, and I hate to say that because I'm me, that I'm always trying to be like, okay, cool, let's be a bit. But the stewarding in Brazil was annoyingly wrong, which just makes it makes it not surprising that it's got to this stage where we can look at that kind of thing, it's Max doesn't care if that happens.
Mm.
And I think that's the questionable part for me.
So the penalty is absolutely right.
Yeah. Obviously, later on, he was giving the 5-second penalty for that.
Yeah. I think the problem is to race like this, it's almost too desperate. It's over the limit. You can't send it into the corner knowing that your rival has to get out and turn out of the way to not have an accident.
Yeah.
And it does set a really bad precedent for F1. And it's not racing for me. That's the problem. It's just have a go over the limit, see what happens. If there's a penalty, there's a penalty. And I wasn't a fan of it. And I love Max Verstappen. You know, I think he's fantastic for the sport. But this and Brazil, I cannot defend his driving. I think he's taken it a bit too far from me. And I know there's a championship on the line. He's willing to do anything, and it's aggressive. It's flamboyant. It's exciting. But I think there's got to be that. I think respect of racing. I think he respects Hamilton, but when they're on the track, in fact, I think it's respecting the racing. It's respecting the way. I think he would do it against anyone, whoever he's against.
Yeah, I do.
If you're in a title fight, but I just don't think it can be allowed for this to continue to just send it into a corner and just take the run off or take out his rival if his rival doesn't get out of the way. So that is my problem.
Do you think there's a space for these two to be sat down and have sort of rules of engagement dictated to them from sort of Formula One bosses, from like the FIA presidency level, that kind of thing?
I don't see how Verstappen listens. I think, and this is why I'm always a big fan of penalising incidents, because if you're more strict, it's better to be that way than like lenient, for example. So
yeah,
it's tricky. I just think from what we've seen with Verstappen recently, I just don't see how he changes. And
I agree.
I don't know how he's going to change. I don't know how he's going to change. Is this just going to be the new way of racing? I hope not, because I don't think it's fair. And Hamilton himself has drawn into that style a little bit, not as much obviously, but he himself is becoming a lot more aggressive. So and we both love this title fight. We love the chaos, the controversy, the excitement. But I think there's got to be a limit in terms of having racing, and what we saw on Sunday wasn't racing for me.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think Sunday, Saudi Arabian Grand Prix just kind of put sort of the cherry on the cake of kind of crazy attacks and stuff like that, and it's different on a start and that kind of thing, because that's where a lunge is a lunge, but in this kind of situation, at full speed, at full pelt, to just do something mad. I mean, it's the whole kind of thing that kind of stems to me is that Max isn't scared to crash, and I think scared's the wrong word to say, because obviously none of them are scared, but Max kind of, I don't know, he's like he dares the other driver to crash into him. Like he it's sort of like he's trying to just incite a reaction from Lewis that is just like, fine, I'm not going to turn out today. And he's like, oh, look at him. And then he can go on like, oh, Lewis turned in on me, and that kind of thing. And I feel like it's kind of like, I mean, the one time where Lewis kind of was like, well, hang on a second, I'm not going to just be bullied by you. Max ended up in the wall at cops and that kind of thing. So there's a lot more to it than that. It's like Max is trying to dare that to happen again. I don't think there's that much premeditation to it. I just kind of get the impression that he doesn't really care about that kind of thing, like, as well. He doesn't really care that
I think it's because he knows
have a go at him.
I think it's because he knows he can't win at the moment because he's got the slower car, so he's got to be ahead to have any chance. He can't fight back. It's, But we saw that if Hamilton overtakes him, he can't get him back unless he does it immediately. So then the race is gone. So that is why he's driving so desperately, I guess. That's why he's so ultra committed in qualifying, because he knows he has to start ahead or be ahead. Yeah. And that is why he's doing it. That's why in Brazil we saw what we saw. So that's part of the reason as well. Because if he knew he had a car that was capable of fighting Hamilton lap for lap, staying with him, I don't think he'd be quite as aggressive, but he's kind of been forced into it. And with the championship situation, it's all or nothing for him at the moment. He doesn't have the car to fight Hamilton if he's behind.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's shown that patience he can drive with that style, and France is an example and that kind of thing. But yeah, it seems to me that exactly what you're saying is right, really, on that. So yeah, so as we've discussed a couple of times in this podcast, racing etiquette came into play after this, which is the sort of situation of having to give up the position, return it to the rival, or at least give it up to the rival because of the nature of holding the position, which in this case was deemed illegal. Race control say, okay, hand over the position to Lewis, to Rebel. Rebel then say that to Max, and then Max, and crucially on the radio message from Giampiero Lambiase, GP, Max's engineer, they say, okay, you need to give Lewis the position, do it strategically. And that's the key word, strategically. But I mean, yeah, they're complying with race control's instructions, A. B, they want to do it in a decent way so that they're still in the fight. They don't want to just pull over and say, oh, bye, Lewis, win the race, have a good one, nice knowing you. They want to still be in the fight. So that then led us to the final kinky back straight. The DRS detection zone for... It is a kinky back straight because it's a back straight with a kink in it. But actually, it's more of a long corner. It's like the M25 for our London listeners.
Yeah, when there's no one blocking the roads to try and protest about. So
that was a nice topical reference. But yeah, and then Max then slows down, but Lewis slows down as well. Lewis doesn't know what's going on. Why is Max slowing down? Mercedes have only just been told by race control that Max is going to give them the position. They're just relaying it to the engineers at this current situation. They haven't had opportunities to tell Lewis he's giving you the position. He's giving you the position. Lewis then is like, oh no, Max is being weird. He's doing something strange. He's panicking. Lewis doesn't really know what's going on because he's, Max has kind of scared him with the way he races today. I think you can kind of see that. And then Lewis finally goes to pass with Max's kind of sort of erratic braking style. And then Max then kind of brakes really harder to kind of just say, get past me, Lewis, at that point, just drive past me. As Lewis then sort of accelerates to go past him, two come together, bam, Lewis is in the back of Max. And at this point, I thought they were both decimated cars. Yeah. It was a really weird situation but then Max is like, what? And then drives off. And then Lewis is like, what? And drives off. And now there's a 2-second gap with Max in the lead again. But yeah, Nigel, thoughts on that when it happened?
I think they're both in the wrong equally for that one.
Okay.
I think they both knew, and I think they both admitted to this, with the DRS line where it was, that they didn't want to be ahead. So I think Verstappen slowing down is fine. And I think Hamilton not overtaking him it's more on him, because I think it's about the attacking driver in that sense, the driver who's behind. So like what he should have done was gone alongside, but slower that he's still behind. So he should have gone like that kind of thing if you watch it on YouTube. If you're not watching on YouTube, watch on YouTube so you can see what I'm doing.
We don't have a timestamp for that either, but anyway.
Yeah, it's about 45 minutes in.
Actually, yeah, check the audio. You know your timestamp.
Yeah. So I think they're both equally wrong. And I think the brake test, as it's been called, Verstappen... I know, because he's... I'm not sure, because he's trying to get out of the way, isn't he?
There's a crucial part on this, which comes from the steward's decision, which came after the race, which was so basically they didn't they weren't too. I think they probably turned a little bit of a frown on when they heard the phrase strategically, because it's like, okay, yeah, there's obviously a little bit of gameplay here, which they're all, it's fine to have a bit of gameplay. They're in a sport, it's a game.
Yeah, that's what Bottas was doing earlier in the race.
Exactly, and there's elements of it that are unsporting and penalizable, and elements of it that aren't. But basically, the steward's document lays it out as car 33 is slowing, and then has a sudden braking, and significantly as a 2.4 G deceleration, and it says here it's 69 bar of pressure, which is that's a sudden then quick slowing down basically. So they say whilst accepting that the driver of car 44 could have overtaken car 33 when that car first slowed, we understand why he and the driver of car 33 did not wish to be the first to cross the DRS. However, the sudden braking by the driver of car 33 was determined by the stewards to be erratic, and hence the predominant cause of the collision. And obviously then that was given a 10-second penalty because of the way the braking occurred later down the line. They were fine with the gamesmanship element of it and that kind of thing, and they were fine with that from Hamilton. Really, they say, okay, that's fine that you don't want to pass him, so they throw Hamilton off the hook there. What do you think to that?
Hamilton's not right behind him though, there's no contact. If Hamilton's to the side, like I say, and Verstappen brakes, then there's no contact. So that's why I think they're both in the road. I think Verstappen braking, he can just argue if he's trying to get out, make sure Hamilton gets through, and I think that's okay.
Do you not think that the fact that then it's just when he's like behind him and then it's suddenly erratic, then do you not think that is arguably more?
But then you should say Hamilton shouldn't be right behind him in that situation, because I don't think it is weird.
Not in that regard. In that regard, if Hamilton is behind, is like you say, right behind him, not alongside him on a different line of the track, for then Verstappen then to brake erratically and then brake suddenly harder, is that then not more penalizable for Verstappen's side?
What if Hamilton is alongside?
Is it then a brake test? No, if Hamilton is directly behind, and then Verstappen then brakes hard, which is what they're saying in the steward's note. I hope I'm being clear with that.
I'm not sure,
because that's the kind of thing that tips me in. Okay, tips me in favor of the steward's decision here, because then they sort of the way they describe the erratic braking and the really hard braking to come at such a point when Hamilton's behind, and it then sort of is a half brake test and a half frustration of go past me now, all right, that kind of thing.
I don't see it as frustration. I see it as he's trying to let him through. That's how I see it.
Frustration at him not going past, and that kind of thing.
Last effort to let him through.
I'm kind of seeing it as a bit more. Well, I'm agreeing with mostly what the stewards have said, and they've got access to a lot more than me. But I do think it's confusing that Lewis didn't pass him, but I think at the end of the day they're both playing a game, and
that's why I think they're both wrong, because I think
they're both fine to play the game. Are you okay with? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's fine, but I think they're both wrong as well. They're both right and wrong. Like they're both. I don't think anyone's to blame, because if one of them doesn't play the game, the penalty's
not for that. The penalty is for the braking.
But the braking is part of it, isn't it? Well, because if you're not on the throttle on a straight,
no, it's like it's not like when you say it's theoretically, let's say an overtake is happening and then there's a collision because of the overtake. The overtake is fine, and going for the overtake is fine, but the result of the way it happened is what's penalized, that kind of thing. So in this, it's fine that you're braking, it's fine that you're letting them through, it's fine that you're doing it for DRS and you're being strategic, but you've done it in an erratic manner and a weird way, and that's caused a collision. The it says fact, car 33 braked in a manner which caused a collision with car 44 even in turn 26. Lots of numbers there, bloody hell. But anyway,
But you think the braking's fine? You've just said, haven't you?
I think the braking is erratic, and I agree with the steward's
statement. It's erratic.
But yeah, I think then that's what's being penalised. That's what's being penalised. I think it's fine to play the game with the DRS detection. That's fine, and that's arguably actually quite clever in my opinion. But I think the way it's been done by Verstappen is, like, as the stewards know, erratic, and I think then I understand the penalty.
Is it not erratic from Hamilton to not build back, to not be in a better, to not have tried to overlap?
It's not. That's not. I mean, like, I don't think it's not. You're not allowed. It's not like, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this.
No, because it's difficult. It's difficult.
It's kind of like, because the predominant cause of the crash was, so Hamilton then goes to go past, and then Verstappen suddenly slows more. I think I need to see a bit more of this, but there's nothing saying that then Hamilton is accelerating. Then it's just going. It's saying that Verstappen is then braking harder in comparison to Hamilton's movement to try and go past, and that's what's caused the crash there. And I think, yeah, I mean, brake test or not, I don't think there's any. To be honest, yeah, as I'm speaking it out loud, it's helping me sort of figure out my opinions a bit more. I don't think there's malice. I don't think there's brake test.
I think it's just clumsy from both drivers.
I think it's clumsier from Verstappen.
Yes. All right, 60-40 Verstappen. That's what I'll say. Which isn't really much.
No, I'm weighing it more to Verstappen.
I'm not sure if I would have penalised it, though. That's why.
Fair enough.
I mean,
I think it's just so weird, isn't it?
Second penalty.
It's just so weird.
I mean, well, is it? Should he have been given a grid penalty rather than a meaningless time penalty? That's another thing.
Well, I think because he finished the race, it's no grid penalty. Simple as. Okay. That's that. I think, to me, that's fair enough in that regard.
Okay.
And really, he's finished second in a broken car with 15 seconds worth of time penalties. Like, it's not like they haven't penalised him across this race.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
It's
there's a bigger story with Verstappen, I think, and the way he races, and whether it's, as we've touched on.
Because
this is just another part of it.
There's a level of desperation in the way he's trying to just slow to let a car past, and that's that's problematic in my opinion there.
And then he did let it past. Was it the next lap or a couple of laps later?
Well,
then he overtook him straight back.
Now this is where it gets kind of confusing in my memory.
So he got a 2-second gap.
He's got a 2-second gap. He's pushing, and I think they're contemplating, can we hold this gap? I think they think, okay, well, Lewis is going to have to pit. We need to push. And they give that a lap or two for Mercedes to kind of evaluate whether they're going to pit, and they think, okay, this is holding up. And then Red Bull see, oh, actually, Merc still has the pace, which I think is so surprising. Oh my god, I thought Verstappen was going to win the championship at that point, but really, personally. But Hamilton's still able to close, and that's when Red Bull then go, okay, now we are going to give him the position, which is what you were just talking about.
Yeah, they do give the position. Hamilton goes
in the same location,
but then Verstappen just dives down the inside, and that's when I laughed while I was watching it. He just dives straight down the inside, and takes the lead, and has DRS down the main straight.
Yeah,
the first thing I thought was Belgium 2008.
Yeah, me
too.
About
5 seconds later, he was announced that he had the 5-second penalty for what we talked about 2 hours ago.
Which is fair enough. Which is fair enough as well. Because there've been so much messing around trying to get that position to Hamilton and so on, and they've been contact and that kind of stuff. And then at points, Verstappen was actually and Red Bull were deliberately trying to put away and not give the position back. And really, then it's just like, this is okay. You've had your chance now. We've had enough now. Penalty. Do you think that's fine? Do you think because there was an attempt then
I mean,
that shouldn't have been there.
I think I think that was fine. I think that was fine. Yeah, yeah. I think it was done the right way. I think.
Yeah, I think that
I'd
they
have to
gave the
think about it.
opportunity, which is the bit that I think. Yeah, they gave the opportunity. They gave the opportunity a couple of times. I'm pretty sure. So I think that's fine as well. So then Max is in the lead again.
But then he lets him through for some reason. Now, why did you do it? Why do you think he did that, Freddie?
Oh, I mean, I think that was in a response to the final corner thing. Where he's oh God, there's so many things happening in that bloody corner. The one where he took the lead again. I think they consider that to be a bit too cheeky.
Right. So you think he
Spa
tried to
2000
do the lead again properly?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Spa 2008 is obviously rings true in a lot of fans' minds. At the end of the day, that was a 25-second penalty off the top of my head.
Stupid. Yeah, they did. Well, I mean, we didn't have 5 and 10-second time penalties those days, did we? So I think it's equivalent of a drive-through. I think it was.
Okay, so that could have been. Yeah, and they were weird back then because of a 25-second penalty. Weird back then because of
those penalties. I prefer them.
I know. I was thinking earlier today, when was the last time we had a drive-through penalty? And I think it was Austria. I think it was because Yuki Tsunoda crossed over a line or something, but I can't. He might have just got 2 5-second penalties.
Drive-through for that? Wow.
No, he probably didn't. Then he probably didn't. I'm probably completely wrong. Maybe it was Stroll. I don't know. I can't remember the last drive-through penalty. And when I started watching F1, it was drive-through, and that kind of thing. And I was like, that's a decent penalty. It's a penalty.
Other motorsport series as well. They don't really have these 5, 10-second timers. They just have drive-throughs or stop and goes. So
yeah.
But anyway,
exactly.
that's another.
Oh my Lord, that's another day.
Yeah. So yeah, we have the situation. Now this is where Hamilton is a bit cheeky himself because he crowds Verstappen out a bit. But given everything else that happened, it was a nothing incident, if you can even call it an incident, when he pushed Verstappen wide, which meant Verstappen couldn't get on the power and attack down back to turn 1. So I think, and Hamilton talked about how difficult it was to stay cool. I think that was the only small crack he had with his foot. I'm going to make sure he doesn't, get back at me. Yeah. And then, so he did that. And I don't blame him. Whether it was right, I mean, compared to, like I said, what happened before, it was nothing. So I think it was fair. And the stewards with the decisions this year, I think, are saying that those kind of things are fine. It's no different to what Verstappen did in Imola or Spain at the start, really.
Well, that move was then
obviously fine.
That move was then obviously deemed borderline black and white flag, which is fine then, isn't it? Black and white flag is okay. That's nearly over the line. Hold your horses. And nearly black and white flag is then okay. That's nearly over the line. Hold your horses again. So yeah, which says okay, we understand. Okay, that's good. Don't push it, and that's a fine thing to say. And I mean, we don't know how much of that was broadcast. We don't know how much of whether there's kind of a hold your horses message to Red Bull. Probably is. I would say, based on that situation. But yeah, and I think you're right about Hamilton trying to stay cool. I wouldn't.
And well, I guess that was the end of the controversy, and how the Mercedes car stayed intact, the Mercedes front wing after that hit. I mean, they built an absolute tank, quite frankly, for it to hit the Red Bull and not damage the front wing, because we saw.
That's why I find F1 crashes so weird. That's why I find F1 crashes so weird, because Bottas at the start of the Hungarian Grand Prix kind of tapped the back of Lando Norris, and then the front of his car disintegrated and his wheel was in the air and everything. Hamilton's been on the throttle, lightly on the throttle, not high speed really. And Verstappen's then become a brick wall in front of him, and he's got minor end plate damage, which, like you say, Ocon's already biffed, and then it's just like, oh, he's going faster. What are you doing?
Yeah. Well, it's just, it must be the certain parts of the back of the car that hit him, which is more susceptible to damage or the impacts. It must be that. But the way that held up, I mean, if he did have to change his front wing, that would have just created even more drama. I think God knows what would have happened. But
I think looking back at it, I think really the contact he made with both the cars he made contact with that same part of the front wing was just tires. Is that right? Ocon was tire and the floor, which is why it sparked a little bit, as in the ground, not the car floor. And then Verstappen, was that the rear wheel of Verstappen, or do you think
I didn't think it was, but I've not seen it for about 12 hours.
So no, I think Verstappen was worried about a puncture, but he didn't get one. So that's where I'm a bit like, but possibly. Either way, beef.
Given what happened, I don't think there's such thing as a deserved result, but I think it was the right result with Hamilton because it
felt correct.
Just like Brazil, just like that incident there. I think I said a similar thing. And I love both drivers. So, but I think the important thing for Verstappen is that he did finish second, so he will lead. So he does lead the championship because of count back because of more wins.
Yes.
And that is in a way a result for him because he didn't have the pace to win. He'd argue. So
yeah, you're right.
Crazy 30 or 45 minutes stat from the red flags that final overtake was.
Much screaming occurred from me. So much. I couldn't really believe what I was seeing. And it's the only time when I've, arguably the second time watching Formula One, where I felt like it was being taken into their own hands in a way that was a little bit worrying.
What was the first time?
Mexico 2016, when Vettel then had a rage quit. But that was for about 2 laps. And then he kind of sat back and was like, what the hell did I just do? And he had a little bit of introspection and retrospection as well. And also the right decisions were made that day. But anyway, that's the only other time in the moment.
I think this championship fight, I feel like this is what Senna and Schumacher would have been like. I feel this, we're getting it now. We're getting it 17 years on. Because I think this is different to Senna and Prost. Senna and Prost were less incidents than this.
They just didn't speak to each other. That's what the off track was. What made Senna and Prost.
The off track, was bigger. Whereas this, and like both teams as well, Mercedes and Red Bull, those days Ferrari and McLaren, I don't think it was this heated. Whereas Mercedes and Red Bull it's an absolute war off the track between Horner and Wolff and the engineers and everyone. It's just a titanic battle. It's just off the scale how intense it must be in that paddock for the last few weekends, and God knows what Abu Dhabi is going to be like. Oh,
it's going to be a fire pit. It's going to be madness. Is Abu Dhabi?
I've got. Is there any way it's going to be clean?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it could be clean. It could also be dirty. That's the thing. I don't know. It could go either way. You could have a straightforward race in a really cool way, and you could have, because let's be honest, the Red Bull did have, I mean, we said slower car, it did have pace here. I think really there's more of an offset at the end of the race. There's an offset because they have admitted to thinking there were some cuts in the tyre at the end on Verstappen's car. That's why he was so much slower than Hamilton at the end, because at the end of the day, they were, I think the Red Bull was holding better pace with Mercedes, and I think would have done if there'd been sort of ordinary strategies in a much better way than we saw on the pole position capabilities, potential capabilities, argue that as well. I think it's going to be way more level than we think it could be in Abu Dhabi. I think the cars are going to be at a keel with each other.
I hope so.
I hope so. Yeah. I don't think it's wishful thinking. I think it's coming out of my mind. And we've seen Max Verstappen drive from pole into the distance of that track. We've seen Lewis Hamilton drive from pole into the distance of that track. And we also seen both drivers now attempts to cling on to championships in, at the time, considered dirty ways for Lewis in Abu Dhabi, and in desperate ways for Max in Jeddah. So who knows? It depends how the race plays out, because it could invite desperation and attack and dirtiness, or it could invite a proper hard best man wins fight.
Well, without the red flags in Saudi, Hamilton probably would have romped away, and there wouldn't have been any chance of Verstappen to attack or do anything. So it could be the same way in the final race. It could be.
And in the same way, the way we were talking about how mature he was in Qatar.
Absolutely. And I mean, the amount of twists and turns. I mean, I've been saying last few weeks that I was sure there's going to be at least one more twist. Well, we had about 10 different twists over the last 48 hours. So,
they made contact like 3 times.
I know it is crazy. It really is great.
Oh, it's great. It is great. We breathe it. We live it.
To be tied on points after 21 races, after thousands of kilometers of racing all over the world, it is absolutely perfectly poised.
It's insane.
Yeah, just love it. Yeah.
21 races done. 22 in a few days. This time next week, we'll be doing a podcast about what the stewards are going to decide and who's going to be world champion, and whether it will be announced before the FIA prize gala, I bet. Yeah. If they announce it there, or if they just have a gold envelope moment, like they resurrect Bruce Forsyth or something. Something ridiculous like that. Or they get Jean Todt to do it as his last act as FIA president, and he just decides it.
Nice.
There is precedent. Okay. Interesting. There's one thing I wanted to ask you about to sort of close this off, because we are talking about a dirty fight. There is precedent for what happens if you try to deliberately take someone out in a season finale, and there's
yes,
and that is banned disqualified from the entire standings. Do we think that kind of ruling would be made this time, if that's happened?
If it's very obvious, yes, but I don't think it'll be obvious. I think it will be like Monza, where you can't really tell. And on that day, I didn't think anyone was to blame. So
no, neither.
I think it won't be obvious if Verstappen or Hamilton does something. But I also think it's going to be difficult, because the way Abu Dhabi is, there's no gravel. There is quite a bit of runoff, even with the new layout. So I don't see. It's going to have to be a weird incident, I think, for something to happen.
And if you had to pick a driver to be given a grid penalty from this race for Bahrain 2022, who would it be? That's more of a joke.
What kind of question is that?
That's more of a joke. That's me saying, do you think there could be...
Hamilton's got to be careful, even in practice, because he's on 2 reprimands and 1 more will be a 10 grid place penalty. That is something. Just don't do anything silly in practice, just like we saw. Because we forgot that. Even Friday practice, Saturday practice, wasn't it? Not Friday. It was on FP3 when he.
Oh yeah,
when he got away Mazepin. Yeah. I mean, oh wow, and he's got to be careful of that, because if he does have the fastest car, then like I said, he's just got to execute, and that's what I said before. So if he can execute, get a good start, good strategy, he will be world champion, Hamilton. So that's how I see it.
All right. Well, only one way to find out, and that is to not watch anything and then come and listen to the next episode of the Winging It F1 podcast next week, where we will spoil it all for you there. Nigel, I've had a ball talking about this race with you. It's been something else this year. Best year in F1? Yes? No?
Oh, wow. Definitely. I don't think it'll be better for a while as well. And we'll probably continue talking about this for the rest of the week as well, until Friday practice in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 2022 is going to be awful. But anyway, I cannot wait for Abu Dhabi. Thanks so much for doing this, Nige. We're going to see you next week, everyone. Enjoy the finale. Don't get too stressed, but we will all be bowled by this time next week. Goodbye.